Welcome to this comprehensive tutorial on control structures in Python. The last control structure we are going to look at is the while loops. While loops allow you to execute a block of code repeatedly as long as a certain condition is met. The syntax is as follows. We write the keyword while, and then we specify the condition that you want to check. And here is where the piece of code that you want to execute while the condition you specified here is true. We can look at this in Jupyter Notebook. To demonstrate how to use while loops in Python, we're going to use an example. And suppose you wanted to print out the numbers from 0 to 9. To do this, you can of course use a for loop, but we want to use while loop. The first thing you do, you initialize the value of x to be 0, and then we want to print a number for as long as the value of x is less than 10. So that's the for loop condition, while loop condition, and we want to print the value of x. But then if I do this, we need to have a way of incrementing this from 0 to all the way to 9. So what we do, after printing the value of x, which at this point it's 0, the initial one, then we need to increment by 1. So we say is x, you add equal 1. So this was it's just doing this. You can just write here. It's just taking the value of x, assign it to x plus 1. This is what it does. So this has been, this is the best way of writing it. So after doing that, if we execute this, we get the numbers from 0 all the way to 9. Remember our initial value was 0. So what the while loop did, it checked 0 against 10 and ascertained that the value of x is less than 10. Hence, it printed out the value of x to be 0. Then it looped again. After printing it out, it incremented the value of x by 1. So our current value of x is 1. So came here, checked the condition again. 1 is less than 10, true. It prints out the value of x and increment x by 1 all the way to 9. But at the point where it prints out 9, at the point where it prints out the value of x to be 9 and increments it by 1, so we have the current value to be 10, then what happens is that it checks, is 10 less than 10? It's false. So the while loop breaks, and that's it. So at the end, it just prints out the values of x to be 0 to 9. But as we have seen, it's checking this condition. It's checking if the condition is true. If it happens that the condition is true, it will continue doing something. So for example, assume we had another, we decided to do this. You can have the same code, but instead of this one, assuming that we write this to be true. So if I try to print this out, let's see what happens. So what it does is start printing out the values. So it's infinite loop. It doesn't stop because the condition is always true. So what we do here in this case, we can interrupt the kernel by simply clicking on kernel and interrupt. That will basically stop the kernel, and the execution of that piece of infinite code will stop. So as you have seen, that it's very important to have an exit plan because something can go wrong. And to ensure that nothing goes wrong, we are supposed to use an if condition and say if x is greater than, maybe let's say 10 or 9, then what do? We break the code or the execution. And that's basically it for that. So once you insert the break, and if you decide to click execute, then you see that we are printing out 0 to 9. And that's another way you can use to print x, the value of x being 1 to 9. And if the condition is always true, then we need to have an exit plan by using the break command, which will stop the execution of that piece of code here. This is the piece of code that will execute for as long as this is true. And since we've already declared the condition to to be true, then we need that break. And that's it for the while loop. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video. Please also do remember to subscribe, share, and like my videos.